I want to call this January 26th Rules Meeting to order. Melvina, would you give invocation, please?
Bear with me. Edona galandi hair, chili heli handeskiati no. Nimna hisiu heldi do has the hand of Gilan Stanaha. Iskayoni no has to you dunk and Watley Lohi off the Chilegi Skadu. Father, we just thank you again for this day. We just thank you for bringing us back together safely. Lord, I just ask you to be with each and every one as we go about our business. Lord, that you would just guide us and protect us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, Shelley, would you do roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mike Shambaugh.
Here.
Joe Deere.
Ani.
Keith Austin.
Here.
Danny Callison. Julia Coates. Sean Crittenden.
Here.
Mike Dobbins.
Here.
Rex Jordan.
Here.
Johnny Kidwell.
Here.
Daryl Legg.
Here.
Wes Snowfire. Dora Petskowski.
Here.
Joshua Sam. Melvina Shotpouch. E.O. Smith. Condessa Teehee. Victoria Vasquez. We have a quorum.
Good deal. If everybody's had a chance to look at the minutes, could I get a motion?
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. All right, starting off with reports from Marshal Service, Marshal Shannon Buell.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Marshal.
Besides what's in the monthly report, we do have some news. We're up to about 50 marshals now, which is a substantial increase in marshals. I wanted to wait until we got to about 50 before we started specializing in different areas. So one of the things I'd like to bring up today is that we're going to open an office. My staff are up there actually today putting furniture in up at Cherokee Heights in Pryor. So it's a building that we've had up there, the nation's had. The building is going to hold some of my staff, juvenile justice, adult justice, probation pro, and One Fire is going to have a representative there. What we're hoping is that's going to help us be more reactive to needs of the community in the northern areas around Kenwood, Pryor, Delaware County, those areas. Second, we have a small satellite office we've opened in Stillwell. I actually have an administrative staff that's where she now works out of. And then we have offices for marshals that come in and do reports, stuff like that. What we're trying to do is get marshals in our communities more than we have. It's a matter of bodies. You know, we cover a huge area. Another place where we're moving quickly is in Sequoia County. So our first phase of this is, quite frankly, Delaware County, Mays County, Stillwell. Of course, here we'll always have a presence here because of our services that other parts of the tribe have here, and then Sequoia County. And then as we're actively involved in recruiting, we actually are in backgrounds of several people right now. I would like to applaud the staff at HR. They've worked really one-on-one with my staff to get through the process of a marshal. It's different than a normal employee of the tribe. There's extra steps, there's extra things that we have to do to ensure that the needs of the tribe, as a marshal's concern, is taken care of. So there's some added time that we have to devote to make sure that these applicants are exactly what we need. I will tell you, we still have openings. I have a bunch of openings. So if you have people in your district, don't tell them to call me, okay, because I can't help them through the process. I'm a firm believer that a candidate should stand on their own. If a council person calls for whoever, that doesn't help them. I don't care who it is, if they call, and it's nice to hear. How's that? It's nice to hear that you respect that applicant or whatever, but it doesn't help them in the process. The process is rigid for a reason. I don't have discretionary ability to just at whim hire somebody or at whim say no. If they're the top of the list when they make it through the process, let's say we have 10 openings, if they're number 11, I could have known them for 20 years and really like them, but I don't mess with that process. We started that when I took over. It's worked out for us well. And so we're continuing forward with that. But, like I said, we're continuing to increase the Marshal Service presence in the community. I know that it is a priority of the administration that we have a larger presence in the community. And thank God we're getting the amount of marshals needed so we can actually start spending more time in the community where we need to be and where the council funds us to be. So I'm excited about what's happening in Cherokee Heights. I'm excited about what's happening in Sequoia County. And I'm going to be excited when we start pushing out to other areas as well. If there's any questions on that or anything on my monthly report, I'll be more than happy to answer them at this time.
Deputy Vasquez.
Thank you, Chair. Marshall, is Pryor as far north as you plan to go with the satellite office?
No, it'd be my hope that we get one further north. Now, what I've done is we have some officers that live north. So as a marshal, you get a take-home car, and you do what's called going 10-8. That's going to work. Your day starts the moment you get in your car at your driveway. So let's say I have a marshal lives in Grove, I have a marshal lives in Veneta, or I have a marshal lives in Owasso. Their day starts the moment they get in the car, get on the radio and say, dispatch, I'll be 10-8. So what that allows is marshals are just people. People like to stay in their communities as much as possible. So we've already done that over the years. Part of it is manning. I don't want to open a satellite office that I can't have staff at. We've done that in the past at the Marshal Service, not under me, but we have, or we've had an office somewhere, and it has a sticker on the front of the door that says Marshal Service, but there's nobody ever there. So just because I have a building doesn't mean I have people to fill that building. So this is going to be staggered. I want to make sure, one, the need is there, but two, that I have the staff to fulfill that. I don't want to come to you and say, hey, I'm opening one in Kansas City, and none of your people can come and visit us because we're never there. Does that answer that? We're working toward other areas, but I want to make sure we have the staffing to do all the stuff that we have to do at the Marshal Service first.
Yes, thank you, but my concern would be if we do have issues in as far north as Welch or Veneta, do we call this Pryor office, or do they just call?
You'll still have marshals in your areas, okay? This is going to be a location that marshals can come to do the reports, can come and do that. It's also a place where other members of Cherokee Nation can come and feel safe to do their stuff. Juvenile justice, they can have clients come in there and they know there's going to be a marshal close. Probation pro, same thing. One fire, they can feel safer knowing that if there's not a marshal in the building right now, there will be one within that county or two around. It's not like we're having to respond here to get to Kenwood, or here to get to Roach, or here to get to Veneta. It just extends our presence, so we have a closer jumping off point for marshals bringing evidence in, marshals bringing reports in, writing up criminal cases, so if that makes sense.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councilman Deere.
Hey, Shannon, is there still a plan to utilize JWSAM with the marshals?
J.W. Sam.
Catoosa, that building we took over where career services, they're starting to move stuff in there.
I don't have that information. To my knowledge, we've asked for a room there just because, but C&E also has forwarded us a room in Catoosa at Hard Rock.
Mm-hmm.
And they already have our computer system. So we utilize Catoosa quite a bit. So I don't know if we're going to use SAM I don't think we're going to use that like we're doing Pryor, because we don't have a partner like C&E that has locations in Pryor or that area, Kenwood, Pryor, that we do in Catoosa.
And the reason why I asked that is, human services there, a lot of homeless. There's been a couple of incidents there. And not saying they need to be stationed there, but just the occasional swing-bys,
Well, yes, we actually have human services in every county put on extra patrol list.
Okay.
One of the things we're also doing is adding to our security staff. Security at Cherokee Nation are armed. Now, they don't go out and work criminal cases.
Yeah.
But if you notice in the hall here at the complex, our security staff are well-trained. They go through Oklahoma CLEAT for their accreditation, and they go through advanced training with the Marshal Service to make sure that they know what they need to do in use of force. But you can go out in the hall here, and there's a security officer with a firearm and a taser. And that's part of that. I can't have a marshal everywhere all the time.
Right, and I think that would be a good idea, something like that, one of those there,
Well, it's very.
instead of a marshal. Yeah, I think that would be.
I would agree to that. I think that's something
Because
we
Marshall's
definitely
got
talk
bigger,
about.
I guess bigger issues, we would say.
Right.
But having the presence of some kind of security, like the guys in the hall, at Catoosa in that area because of that would be good. Mainly because the two ladies up front,
Right.
one of them's elderly, and when they get into situations, I mean, that could go bad real quick.
I know that we're looking at all the properties.
Right.
So we're doing analysis of every property, as the Cherokee Nation grows.
Yeah.
and inevitably it will, our footprint is all, we in the Marshal Service, we in security, that footprint also has to grow. So
Yeah.
we always have to look at what's the best dollar for your dollar that you give me every year. What's the best way to utilize that?
Yeah.
And that's one of those things we're looking at. Are those outlying, whether it's clinics, whether it's human resources, whether it's education, whatever those things are, we're looking at those sites constantly to see is there something we need to do.
Yeah, just making sure that was on your radar, since that's a
absolutely
new
is.
property.
It absolutely is.
So, okay, thank you, Chair.
Councilman Callison.
Marshal, so back to Mr. Councilor Vasquez's question. The people that are stationed at Cherokee Heights, they won't be sent to Adair County or to Sequoia County they'll always be in that area?
I cannot say that. So we'll have the office there, but there is staffing. So let's say we have a big issue in Sequoia County. That's not saying that those people won't go there for a big issue, but that will be their normal patrol area, will be that area. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
So that area covers, let's say, Mays County north, and from Mays County west to our border in Tulsa, if that makes sense. So that would be their normal patrol area, just like I have a southern normal patrol area. But that doesn't mean, I will never sit here and say a northern marshal won't go south and vice versa, okay? If we have a armed barricade gunman in Salisal, everybody's going to Salisal. Does that make sense? So it's just for day-to-day operations, like we have a lieutenant that's going to have an office in the Pryor office. We have an investigator for the Marshal Service that will office out of Pryor. We've never had that before. Now, that investigator might be in Tulsa at the U.S. Attorney's Office. They might be in court in Tulsa at the federal court. They might be down here in court in tribal court. Just because we have that office does not mean that they'll be there every day. But that's where they will office out of. Where now they office out of Tahlequah. So it brings that footprint more into the community. I mean, does that answer that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have somebody manning the phones every day there?
So the phones still come through our dispatch. We only have one dispatch. So the dispatch will always be out of here, and then they will have a repeater up in Pryor. So let's say something happens in Kenwood, dispatch will always know where the marshals are. So it might not be one of the northern marshals. Let's say a southern marshal is headed up to Siloam Casino for some reason. A call comes out in Kenwood. They might be the first marshal there. So we will still have a nationwide presence. It's just now we're going to have a footprint in those communities.
Councilman Legg.
Hi, Shannon.
Hello.
So on the hiring process, are they hired and then we send them to the training for 12 to 16 weeks?
Yes. So
Okay.
if there are a certified officer, let's say they work for Tahlequah PD or Cherokee County, any agency, and they are a certified police person, then they come here, they just do an FTO, field training with us, and then they have to take what's called a reciprocity test to get their federal credentials. That's not 16 weeks somewhere. Only officers that have never been a police officer before have to go to that. So we're always looking for police officers that are certified that want to come to us. Mainly it cuts out 4 months to train a person if we can find good people first. That's always a plus for us. That's paid 4 months. Yeah, they start here, and we pay them from the day they start working. One of my officers, he started about 2 months ago. He doesn't go to the Federal Academy until April, but he's getting paid the whole time. Now, he can't go out in the street and work, but we have him doing other things around. He's just not sitting there reading a magazine. But he gets paid, or she gets paid from the day he goes to HR, from the day he or she starts working at the tribe until he goes to academy, he's paid or she's paid, and then while at the academy, they get paid as well. So they don't come here and lose pay.
Anybody else? It's a good idea, Marshal. There always has to be some method to the madness of patrolling 14 counties with X amount of people and keeping them diversified where they can go in any direction they need to go. So it's good to see our numbers are getting up where you can do that. That's where we've really been struggling. I mean, to coverage-wise, that's a good deal, good to hear. I believe that's all I have, so good report.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, sir. All right, next we have from the Office of the Attorney General, Sarah Hill. Here she comes. Hey, Sarah. Turn your mic on, please. I don't know if it's on. Is it on? All right.
Shannon was trying to sabotage me and my report. I want the record to reflect that. It's a pleasure to be here today, as it always is, in front of the Tribal Council. I want to give you, first of all, a little update on the Tribal Court. It's been about, of course, we just closed out 2022, so I thought this would be a good opportunity to give you some numbers about what our office's work looked like in the previous year. So last year, we filed 3,590 cases in the Tribal Court, which included 5,893 separate felony and misdemeanor offenses in the Tribal Court. So that's another banner year for the Attorney General's office. In addition to that, there were about 2,300 tickets filed in the District Court, traffic tickets and offenses that are ticketed offenses. Of course, we still have our nice network of cross-deputization agreements. We're up to 22 municipal agreements. So I think we had around 14 at the end of last year. We've got 22 municipalities now who've agreed to forward their offenses to the Cherokee Nation. And in exchange for that, they maintain a certain part of the fee for those tickets that they write to continue to support local law enforcement. So that has been continues to be a popular avenue. The AG's office has also added significantly to its staff. We've added 3 new attorneys, 3 paralegals, and 2 investigators, in addition to other support staff, including legal assistants and other paraprofessionals, people that make sure that all of the various tickets and payments that are coming into the AG's office are going where they belong. So I continue to be very proud of the work that the AG's office does. The criminal staff has really handled a tremendous amount of work, and now I'm pleased to say that we're getting much closer to being fully staffed in terms of attorneys on the criminal side, which makes the job much more pleasant for those people who are spending all day in the tribal courts prosecuting crime. They have a much more manageable caseload, so we've made really good progress on that front. Of course, the Brackeen case, just to remind you, that's the Indian Child Welfare Act case that's in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. That case was argued in the previous term. We're just waiting on a decision. We expect it to be sometime this spring, but we don't know when. So we'll just have to keep our eyes open for that. But I wanted to remind you that that was out there and will be coming up in the next few months. There's another case we've talked about a time or two, the Hooper case. That involves the city of Tulsa and an argument by some of the municipalities where they believe under the Curtis Act that they have jurisdiction over ticketable offenses in their jurisdiction. So the city of Tulsa believes that it has jurisdiction over Indians in the city of Tulsa because of some provisions of the Curtis Act. That case is going up to the 10th Circuit. It has been set for oral argument on March 23rd at 8:30 a.m. which will be, of course, in Denver at the federal courthouse of the 10th Circuit. So that case is going up on oral argument. The nation is not a party to that case. The tribal nations are typically not parties to these cases that involve individual criminal defendants. But we have filed an amicus in this case, as have the Chickasaw, Choctaw, Seminole, Muskogee, and Quapaw nations have all filed amicus briefs in that case. So it's going to be argued here in March. The other case that's sort of been discussed recently that is worthy of an update is the Strobel case. That's an income tax case. There was the decision entered by the administrative law judge that initially said the state lacks jurisdiction to tax the income of this Muskogee citizen who lives within the Muskogee Reservation and who works for the Muskogee Nation. The Oklahoma Tax Commission overturned that decision by the administrative law judge, and now the Ms. Strobel, who is the taxpayer, has appealed that to the Oklahoma Supreme Court. That case is in the middle of briefing. The brief in chief will be due next month. And so I expect that there will be another robust round of amicus briefs in that case. Again, the tribes are not parties to that case. It's between the taxpayer and the state. But that issue is getting squared up for the Oklahoma Supreme Court. And I don't always get to come to report to you news that's just really nice and pleasant to hear. It's usually things that are really challenging or there's difficult aspects to it. But every year, the Oklahoma Bar Association hosts the mock trial program for high schools. And every year, the Cherokee Nation is the regional host. We do one of the qualifying rounds here. The AG's office has hosted that for years, and we will host it again on Monday. So there'll be 3 regional schools coming to test their skills against one another, a bunch of future lawyers practicing in front of real lawyers, practicing lawyers, so members of the local bar and members of the local bench come, and they judge the rounds of the students and hand out awards, and the best teams advance on to the finals and eventually will become the state champions. So it's always really nice. It's a nice break from the usual work that we do. It's amazing to see how talented some of these young people are, and we always think, here they come. They'll just be here in a few years. We'll have to deal with these kids who are already so talented and so skilled. So it's always a lot of fun to do, and we're glad to be able to host that again on Monday. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can.
Councilman Callison.
A.G. Hill, when we have a trial that goes before our courts, public defenders, are they appointed and paid for by the Cherokee Nation, or where does that actually come from?
They're paid by the court. So the court appoints individuals to represent defendants, and the court pays the people who are public defenders. We don't have a public defender office the way that some jurisdictions do. Instead, it's on a rotating basis. People who practice locally and who do criminal defense work will sign up and say, hey, I'm available to take appointments, and the court will go from that list and will select and rotate that list around so that people obtain appointments from that list.
Anybody else? That sounds like fun, that lawyer day. I mean, I bet that gets pretty good. Those kids going at it, that's pretty cool.
I will say, in a year that I will not designate, I was at one time a participant in the Oklahoma mock trial, as were many of the people that are lawyers today. So it's a great program.
That's pretty cool. Okay, Sarah, we appreciate your report.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. From FOIA and GRA, Gwen Terrapin. Hey, Gwen.
Good afternoon. It's good to see all of you today.
Yep.
For the calendar year ending 2022, we had 36 FOIA requests. 5 of those are outstanding at this time. And then for 2023, so far we've got 3, and all 3 of those are outstanding. Everything's been updated on the website, including adding the 2023 report. We took off the 2019 so that we'd have room on there for it. And you guys should have gotten a copy of my report.
Does anybody have any questions for Gwen? Doesn't look like it. Good job, ma'am.
Thank you.
Have a good day. All right, next from the Election Commission, Marcus Fears. Hey, Marcus.
Good afternoon. You guys have my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions from that. Filing does start February the 6th through the 9th.
Anybody have any questions for Marcus? Well, Marcus, you look bored. You need something to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if you are, you won't be here in a little bit, huh?
No,
All
not
right.
at all.
All right, thank you for your report, Marcus.
Thank you.
From the Tax Commission, Sharon Swepson. Swepston, with the T, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Just a little update on what's going on revenue-wise through November. Year-to-date, we're about 2.89% less than what we were this time last year with motor vehicle. Not sure exactly why that is. A lot of it may be the interest rates and different things like that, but hopefully that will continue to pick up and we'll recover that and go on. As far as revenue and taxation, we're about 22.53% more than what we were last year, and that mostly has to do with retail sales and alcohol sales in the casinos. The tobacco and the cigarette sales are both down slightly, as you can see in the graphs that you have, but those are all rolled together, and that comes up to the 22.53% increase over where we were last year at this time. And I think you have my report, and if you have any other questions, I'll try to answer them for you.
Does anybody have any questions for Sharon? We still looking for a J woman or a man to do that, to get us at full strength?
Yes.
How are we across the nation in our tag offices? Are we pretty full, or do we have a lot of
We are-
vacancies?
We've still got some vacancies like at Catoosa, but right now we're standing pretty good. We're maintaining, and those are there for growth, and if we need them, then we can go ahead and fill them, but we're pretty solid at most all of ours. The one we miss the most is Jay.
Yeah. So Adair County, good? So it just opened up, it's all full? Good deal. All right. Good report, Sharon. Have a good evening. All right, from self-governance, we got Ashana Miles.
Good afternoon, Council. You have
Good
my report
afternoon.
before you. If you have any questions, I welcome those as well.
Does anybody have any questions for Ashana? All right, good job, ma'am.
Okay.
You have a
that's
good
it.
evening.
Thank you all so much.
Yep. All right, next from the Gaming Commission, Janice Purcell.
Good afternoon. I submitted my report. I just wanted to add a few things. Under licensing, we also approve license classifications, and those are jobs that are either key or primary management officials. And we do that, and we put them into our system so that we know that we have to fingerprint those, because those are really important. The fingerprinting goes to the FBI, and so there's a memorandum of understanding with NIGC, National Indian Gaming Commission, and the FBI. So I just wanted to add that is also one of the tasks that we do.
Does anybody have any questions for Janice? All right, Janice, you got off the hook. You have a good evening.
You too. And also, our next Gaming Commission meeting is February 10th at the Chota Center, and we really appreciate it when everyone is there. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, from Human Resources, Samantha Hendricks.
Good to see everyone again
Samantha.
today. Good to see you. You have my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions if I can. In addition to this, I did want to add one other thing is that we are releasing our text to apply, which is a new service for us. All you have to do is text Cherokee Jobs to 97211, and that will be able to allow applicants to apply via mobile and also via their text to apply type of avenue. So very excited about that. That's a new thing for us, and hopefully it'll make it easier for our applicants to apply for positions that we have open.
Dr. Cheehee.
I just wanted to say thank you very much for joining us this morning with the informational session. I look forward to hopefully maybe scheduling a question and answer session sometime in the future if you might be able to. I don't know if anybody else might be interested in a question and answer session, but I know I really am. And I just want to say that I know that Human Resources is a department with a long history. And I know that you have stepped into a role that has a lot of existing challenges. And I want to make sure that I give you the kudos you deserve for making the
you.
changes that you have, for trying to implement things that create more efficient systems and more efficient response systems. I know we have a long way to go, but I do want to make sure that you know that I'm appreciative of your efforts, and while still acknowledging that there's still a lot left to do.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for the time, Chair.
Councilman Kidwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ma'am, I just want to say thank you again also for giving us that brief this morning. I truly appreciate it. I had one quick question for you. On budget modifications that come to the council pretty much on a monthly basement or on a monthly basis, and they are creating new positions or restructuring existing positions, do you weigh in on those? Do those get to your desk before they come to us, or?
We help with if there's a salary grade that needs to be graded so that they know what to put into the budget, but that's all handled at the department.
At the
We'll help
department
with the
level.
org charts, just some of the administrative piece of it, to be able to help them with that piece, with the departments.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anybody else? I thought today was a good thing too, and, it's a start. You got to hear our concerns. We got to hear, what you're dealing with, and I hope that some of the input we gave could be helpful, what might make our job easier and yours too. I just think that, if it's time for change and change is coming, let's do it. I mean, let's grab it, embrace it, let's do it, so.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate you, and I believe that's all the questions. You have a good evening, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep. Old business, none pending. New business, number one, Councilwoman Patzkowski, would you take that, please?
Yes, sir. This is 23-001, Public Health and Wellness Fund Act, 2023 Public Health Litigation Settlement Amendments, and I put that in the form of a motion.
We have a motion and a second. Before we vote, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Before we get started, I'm going to ask Chief to come up and give us a brief overview.
Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you on this legislation. This is a significant piece of legislation. This, of course, is an amendment to a law that this council put on the books in 2021. We amended it last year, and this is a really significant amendment. And let's remember that this law originally was to set aside dollars for physical and mental wellness. And to that end, of course, we are planning and will be constructing the first wellness center in Adair County. For the Cherokee Nation will be in Adair County and Stillwell, and that is being funded by the Public Health and Wellness Act. There's other funding and other projects that can come out of that and has come out of that. The harm reduction facility got its start solely because of the funding available in the Public Health and Wellness Act. So I just want to give you the background that this law is working. Last year, we had brought to the council an opportunity to earmark some, or at least substantially all of the available opioid settlement dollars at that time to lock it down for the purposes of building a drug treatment center. It was $15 million at the time, which is a significant amount of money, but of course, in the understanding we all have of the cost of construction, and more importantly, the enormity of the problem that we all face as a nation when it comes to dealing with drug addiction, we know that we need more resources than the $15 million, but we knew more were coming. Now, it's important to remember where those dollars came from. Those dollars are there because our Attorney General's office, across successive attorneys general, aggressively pursued litigation against the opioid industry that had caused so much injury to the Cherokee people, to the Cherokee Nation. And a pioneering lawsuit was initiated a few years ago. It was in the previous administration that was the first in Indian country. And thinking, Mr. Speaker, about other major industry litigation that resulted in settlements earlier in time, you think about the tobacco settlement in which tribes were not at the table. Well, tribes were at the table for the opioid settlement, and they were at the table because of the Cherokee Nation. And a number of tribes now benefit from it. In fact, there's at least one nationwide opioid settlement. So I'm proud of the Cherokee Nation and the Attorney General's office. I know the Attorney General had presented earlier. She certainly deserves credit along with her team and her predecessor, Mr. Hembry, as well. All of that has resulted in about $98 million available to get some remedy, to get some justice for the Cherokee people, and that's what this legislation is about. Mr. Speaker, I know we have discussed, in fact, I want to express my appreciation for the council for the help on this legislation, whether it was the actual wording of the legislation or whether it was broader ideas that you all had brought forward about what we need to do. And we know there's a gap in our behavioral health system in terms of directly providing drug treatment in a facility. I'm very proud of our behavioral health team. They do a great deal, but getting them more resources to directly provide addiction treatment, Mr. Speaker, I think is going to change a lot of lives for the better. We've got great expertise in our health system. Now they have the resources to match that expertise, or they will upon the enactment of this legislation. If I could, just a brief moment more, sort of outline, Mr. Speaker, what is in the legislation. $73 million over the next 5 years to construct drug treatment facilities. The first one we have planned is here in Cherokee County, an $18 million facility. I believe we have we have a rendering. We have the rendering that's been available out here, and we'll make that available. That is, and we have the subject matter experts behind me, but that is a level of treatment that is needed. And there is roughly, and I'm a layperson in this area, 3 levels of treatment. The initial treatment, a treatment that's more of a transitional facility with medical professionals on site, and then more of a transitional residential treatment model. Now, we have a big reservation. We have 7,000 square miles, lots and lots of citizens to serve. We certainly can't look at this as the finality, just this one facility. We have to think broader, and $73 million gives us an opportunity to do that. And planning is underway in terms of what's the next steps, and we have to think about that. We have to remember that the reservation is big in terms of population and geography, and we have to be committed to serve that, in my view, and I know council members, you share that, you represent these districts. $5 million for a behavioral health scholarship fund. This puts into perpetuity an opportunity to fund Cherokees who want to be the professionals to work in these facilities and the others that we will build. We need more professionals in this field. We need more counselors, we need more doctors and nurses and all the range of professionals. Now, the good news there is that our health department, and our behavioral health department in particular, already has a pilot program that they're beginning, even before this legislation was conceived, that's a bit of a directed studies program. And Julie Skinner here can speak more to that if you have questions about it, but certainly we'll have more opportunities to discuss after this meeting. But we're already have a department thinking about how we can get young Cherokees to college, pay for it, and then they come back and work for the Cherokee Nation in these fields. With this $5 million, we can scale that up in a very significant way. And in terms of thinking about the Cherokee Nation, this will be available, at least as proposed, to Cherokees no matter where they live. We have talent all over the country. What we want to do is bring them home to work for the Cherokee Nation, and we think that this $5 million endowment working with the Cherokee Nation Foundation and our health department can do that. And it's a long-term strategy to tackle what we all know is a challenge, which is enough providers to do the work that we need to do. Career Services, as you know, Mr. Speaker, does a great job of knocking down barriers to put people to work. And so the thought was $10 million over the course of the next decade could go to Career Services so that they can help people seeking recovery knock down those economic barriers. It may be someone in recovery that when they come out of recovery needs employment. We know Career Services can help people get a job. And so this is a true story. Just today I got a call, and I think the lady, Councilor Crittenden, lives in Adair County, and she said, my nephew is getting out of treatment and doesn't have a place to go. Can you imagine that, Mr. Speaker? Doesn't have a place to go and wants for a job. We can't let that happen. And we're working on that individual, but we have a whole reservation to think about. And so career services being armed with dollars to take on that kind of challenge, I think can make a big difference for people transitioning from hopelessness to hope through recovery to the things we all have to do, which is to make a living, to take care of our families, have a place to live. We think these dollars could do it. Now, it's fair to say 10 years, what happens after 10 years? My sense is, Mr. Speaker, and in talking to council members, I know many share this sense, is that this is a beginning and it's a test and we can do pilot programs, and if it works, this is what we ought to be spending our money on. And so as we go forward and these dollars sunset, we will be moving heaven and earth to find federal dollars, and I think a commitment of tribal dollars when we get to that point, I think would be a good investment. But this will, I think, prove that those dollars are worth it. $10 million for behavioral health to do things that are ideas on the drawing board now to address addiction problems and ideas that have yet to come, but ideas that may not have immediate dollars available. And so over the next decade, our behavioral health team will have access to dollars to put those ideas into reality quicker than any government, any tribe in this country, and they could perhaps be leveraged to bring in federal dollars for those causes. We also received, through the Attorney General's office efforts, a settlement with Juul, the e-cigarette company, for the damage that it inflicted, and as a result of that, we can effectively double over the next 8 years what we spend on smoking cessation. We know, Mr. Speaker, that everyone that can kick the habit is somebody that can become healthier. That's the most important thing, isn't it? If patients are the center of our system, but it also goes to the bottom line. We know that it's expensive to take care of the ailments that attend smoking for a lifetime, and if we can stop that, it's well worth it. We have a team in public health that is already addressing that, but again, they can scale things up, and over the course of the next 8 years, they can find the best practices, implement the best practices, and again, continue that on past the 8th year. There's a difference at the various provisions in terms of years, Mr. Speaker. That has to do with sort of when settlements come in, when they're available, and what sort of is the reasonable time horizon to prove that programs can work, and then see if we can fund these later on with other funding sources. I can't thank the council enough, because before we got to this day, there was a great deal of conversation about this problem. And one other thing I want to acknowledge, Councilor Callison, who is a champion of addressing the issue of drug addiction, reminds me, and I hope you don't mind, Councilor Callison, me sharing this, that there are people, we have to remember this, that need these medicines to live, because if people are in pain, they need what's available. This isn't about curtailing that, and we shouldn't, because the responsible administration of these medicines and the use of these medicines is still viable and vital, and as medical science continues to advance, medicines that are safer is important. But I will tell you this, because of the work of the Cherokee Nation's Attorney General's office, the targeting by the opioid industry that happened, the exploitation by that industry that happened, caused an injury, and for every injury there ought to be a remedy. This is a remedy that I think, Mr. Speaker, will have generational impact. The council's support leading up to this legislation is important and so meaningful, and your support on the legislation's final passage is also important. I'd be glad to answer any questions. We have subject matter experts here as well. What
We have any questions from anybody on this? Darrell?
Hey, Chief. I know we have Samantha, and I know we have Sarah Hill here. I tackled the issue on hiring a convicted felon as a LPC at our clinic, and I know that was under ICWA. I think it was the agreement that we could not have an actual convicted felon as a drug counselor at a clinic. Since we have a behavioral health clinic silo now, is that something that we might be able to look into to see if that law maybe exempts us from the ICWA portion of that, since it won't be at a actual healthcare clinic, it'll be at a behavioral health clinic? Like I say, I got 2 Cherokees working as LPCs in Poto for another agency that would love to come to work for Cherokee Nation. And I'm not pushing it, I'm just saying maybe we can revisit that now and see if that's something that's allowable.
Well, to the extent they can speak to that, I'd invite them to do that. Counselor, thank you.
Might have to give you a big, I'm going to have to look into that, Counselor. Circle back to that, Counselor. Yeah, I mean, I would have to go back and look at the specific rules, and try as I might, I have not found a way to keep in my brain the very many different rules that apply to the Cherokee Nation. So I'll have to, but it's a good question, and I'll look into it.
Yes. Dr. Dobbins.
I don't know if this is for Mr. Hale or all these programs which I fully support, the Public Health and Wellness Fund Act, and I co-sponsor. All of these programs, do they just apply to beneficiaries?
The majority of them, yes, it would apply to people that are beneficiaries.
So your majority, so you're going to have non-beneficiaries that can access?
The one that stands out in my mind is harm reduction services. We do make those available to non-beneficiaries as well.
Okay, and the Harm Reduction Center, it's up and functional, correct?
Correct.
So at this moment, they will receive anybody they don't necessarily have to be native. You're accepting all public.
That's correct.
And it's pretty much a walk-in clinic, is it not?
Yes.
Okay, so that was news to me when I saw that in the press release. I just wanted to double check on that.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Brian.
Councilman Callison.
Brian, I think this is for you. Have we got an idea of how that we're going to go about the treatment? I know there's several different ways that they do the drug addiction treatment where they use the different drugs and the different things of that sort. Will that be something that the nation will look into and form a policy of how we do that, or will that just be done the way that it is?
So we try to adopt a continuum approach where you have intensive outpatient treatment for folks that need it. You also have prevention services, and then you get into the realm where people need to be admitted to the hospital for acute detoxification, and then on to this residential treatment facility where they get intensive treatment while they're actually residing at the location, and they can move into transitional housing and hopefully then get reintegrated completely back into the community successfully. As far as what we use, currently we use mostly a medication called Suboxone for medication-assisted treatment. We are looking at other options as, you know, the drugs that are in the communities constantly evolve, and so our kind of armory has to consistently evolve to deal with that as well. But right now, the majority of what we do deals with Suboxone, is the medication. Thank you. Julie, do you have anything you want to add?
No, that's
Okay.
Anybody else? Julia, let's go with Julia. Julia, we can't hear you. You might be muted. They're checking on it. All right, they're checking on it in IT. Let's get right back with you. Councilman Austin, go ahead and we'll see if we can fix Julia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On this effort, it's wonderful. The term behavioral health is intermixed in here with addiction recovery. And in my mind, that's kind of two different pools. You know, behavioral health, are we also tackling mental health here? Mental health and addiction recovery really are not the same thing. And do we have a good plan for mental health to expand those services as well?
Yes, you're right. Behavioral health is the all-encompassing, encompasses behavioral health, mental health, children's mental health, adult mental health. So yes, these programs that we're integrating, that we're building these pipelines for, actually are going to be training therapists on a culturally perspective, like working with Native Americans specifically. So for instance, assessments, when you're working with the Native American population, our culture plays a role in how we interact with our environment and our worldview. We have a relational worldview in how we relate to people, place, things, and our families. And so sometimes that gets left behind in traditional approaches to behavioral health therapies. And so with this NSU partnership, we've worked really closely on the development of the curriculum to really focus on the aspect of the culture cultural differences between our folks and others. And so on the mental health aspect as well, we have individual, we have family therapies. We're constantly bringing in new like evidence-based interventions. We also have to create the cultural lens in which we use those evidence-based interventions as well. So yes, that's a very strong focus on what we've always done here to really focus on our Native American people.
So does this bring more tools to that
Yes.
part of it as well?
Yes, we work with, so ASAM is one of the big, benchmarks in the leading the United States in working within addiction medicines. And so we're using the ASAM continuum of care model and also making those cultural adaptations to it as well as we go along.
Yeah, I've talked to people who've had profound mental health challenges in their life, and they've had great frustrations in the care and ongoing care, not just from us, but from society at large. There's just not very good options to really help people on an ongoing basis with those things. And it is not addiction. And so much of our language here is about addiction, but that's not addiction-based. That problem is not addiction-based. And they feel, I've had people tell me they feel like somehow they're trying to be put into a box that they don't fit in sometimes.
Yes, we're working very carefully to develop those individual service plans. That's why we want to continue to bring in, it's a system of care for recovery. And so every person who's going through recovery, and they're at different stages, we're going to create a program or interventions that specifically address what they're going through. So some people inpatient may not be the answer for them. Some it may be. Maybe it's intensive outpatient where they're going every day to a therapist in their community rather than having to go outside their community. We're wanting to build those supports in the community so the community itself has its ability to have folks live there and stay there. Because a lot of times you hear people, no, don't go back to your community because you're going to use. And so we don't want that. We want to create the change in the communities themselves.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Julia, have we got you fixed? Guess not yet. It's not on your end, I guess, huh? Can you call in?
Shelley is communicating with her.
Okay. Shelley, are you calling her, or I can, if you want to.
Julia, the email that you were sent for the link to do the video, there should be also a number to call in. No? Okay. The only way that she can do it by calling is calling one of us because our conference phone's no longer here, and you'd have to put it on speaker.
Julia, call my cell phone, 918-353. I don't care, it's public, 2005. I'm only going to say that once. Yeah, and all rates do apply. If you want to call in, I will put you on speakerphone. If you want to call my cell phone, Julia. 918-353, you got me, I think. I'm not going to say it again. I shouldn't say it again. What am I doing? Yeah, that's right. All right, here she is. All right, Julia, you're on. I am on speaker. You're going to have to put your phone next to your mouth. We can't hardly hear you. If you can.
I don't know. Are you hearing?
Yes, better.
No, I've got a lot of feedback. But anyway, let me mute my phone. My question goes back to the mention of Suboxone and some other things. I've gotten several communications from someone here in Los Angeles Wondering if we are also looking into and considering non-medication sorts of treatment. And my understanding was that this individual has had a meeting with Dr. Jones, perhaps, about this. I don't know. I know he's expecting me to lobby on behalf of this, but I frankly don't know enough about it to feel that it's appropriate for me to do so. But I'm just wondering if some more information might be provided to us about whether or not that is an option and a possibility. So that was my question. Thank you.
So would we say that would be a Dr. Jones question? A question for Dr. Jones, if those were going to be made available?
I couldn't understand everything that Councilor Coates said. She asked if what was going to be made available?
Basically non-drug type treatment.
Okay, so non-pharmaceutical
Yes.
interventions. I'll defer to Julie, but I believe, yes, we do have an approach that doesn't always include medications.
Yes, so definitely, we have our medication-assisted treatment clinic as well, but if that's not something that they're wanting to do, we work with individually. We have LADCs, or licensed alcohol drug counselors, that can work with them one-on-one, and they incorporate.
We can't hardly hear you. Scoot up to the mic.
Sorry, and they incorporate other treatments besides medication-assisted treatment. So they do have individual treatments, they can do groups, they have peer recovery support specialists that help them as well develop these other treatments that they can do, like mindfulness, meditation, things like that.
Does that answer your question, Julia? Okay. I'm sorry for the snafu. Okay. Anybody else? Councilman Crittenden.
Yeah, just real quick. This is another one of those issues that, you know, we talk about a lot, but this is truly, literally a life and death situation. You know, if you've had a family member, loved one, or friend, you know, need some services, it's down to crunch time, in my experience. So thank you for doing all this consideration for these folks, and can't look forward to it enough, seeing the good that's going to come out of this. So thanks, all of you guys who had a big hand in it. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else? I would also like to echo those comments to Chief and your administration, everybody involved. You know, for years, this has been building, and for various reasons, society, it's just getting that way. Pressures are greater on families and different things. But, you know, we have a chance to make a difference, and an immediate difference. And I applaud you for stepping up and doing this, because this is something that, you know, places in the United States would love to have something like this, the availability for it. And we're going to have it to help our people. So, you know, I can't imagine anything better that this tribal council could support than this. But, you know, you watch the news, or you read the news, and we talk about mental health as opposed to addiction, but in big cities, the number of people who are dying from fentanyl, they can't put them in the morgue. There's so many dead people. They have no place to put them. That's how big, you know, these things are getting. So, yeah, this is something that needs to be addressed now, and Chief, I applaud you. I don't know, Ms. Montgomery, would you get that picture? I don't know if we've seen it or not, but bring it in here. You know, if you haven't seen this picture, it is beautiful. Yeah, Vanna White, you know. She's the Cherokee Nation, Vanna White. But, you know, this is another beautiful building, and my gosh, look at that. Isn't that unbelievable? How many beds? Good, that's good. Do what? Okay, it was how many, the question was how many beds, and right now it's at 50. Councilman No Fire?
Yeah, I just had one question. I was sitting here thinking about that whenever they talked about the beds. Are any of those beds going to be dedicated for adolescents and their detox ability to treat them?
I don't think you can house them at the same place. Your mic, turn on your mic and start over.
Not for this facility that we're showing you right now, because we already had the Jack Brown Regional Treatment Facility for adolescents.
Okay, perfect, appreciate that. I just knew that, I think in the whole entire state, there's only 60 detox facility beds for adolescents, so I was just kind of, maybe that may be something in the future to think about whenever we go building the next one, so appreciate it. Thank you, Speaker.
Yep. And I think that has to be a whole separate, there can't be a mixing of adolescents and adults too, so that would have to be a whole separate building, which maybe in the future, we're talking about expanding. If this is the middle, and we could do a north and a south and a middle, that would cover all of our, most of our nation to a good extent. So that would be something to think about too. Well, any other questions? All right, let's give it a vote. All in favor? Oh, are we? Oh, I'm sorry. What are we on? Number 2.
Speaker, if I could ask for a moment.
Yes, ma'am.
For new business item number 2, I would request that be tabled till February rules.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to table item 2 to the February rules. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right. That brings us to announcements. Are there any announcements? All right, none. The next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Thursday, February 23rd at 1 p.m. And again, thank you, Chief, and your administration. Need one more motion. Second. Have a motion, second. All in favor? We're adjourned.